Hi everyone. We are here to finish up chapter 22. It was really nice to see a lot of you yesterday at the parade. It was a beautiful day, and there was a really good turnout of teachers, and I was really happy to see some of you guys that um, it's really hard as a teacher to be away from your students, as you can imagine. I'm sure you guys are having kind of the same feeling being away from your teachers and your friends that you don't get to see all the time at home. So thank you guys for coming out. It really made our day as your teachers. So here we are. We're going to finish up chapter 22 today. You have a discussion board question to respond to after you watch this video. And then we'll be done 22. Next week we'll start 23 and get you guys started for your summative assessment. So a summary of natural selection. Individuals with certain heritable characteristics will survive and reproduce at a higher rate than other individuals. This is not typically seen with the human population, mostly seen in other animals and plant species. That giraffes is a really good example. Giraffes that have longer necks are able to survive and reproduce faster than giraffes that were once born with short necks because they couldn't reach the food source. Natural selection increases the adaptation of organisms and increases the adaptation of the organisms to their environment over time. And if an environment changes over time, natural selection may result in the adaptation to these new conditions that may rise to new species. So here we have the same flower that evolution has derived. Well, not flower, sorry, praying mantis. You can see this one right here, his leg, his antennae. But over time, the ones that live in the leaves, believe it or not, this is the mantis here. They have adapted to their environment to blend in for camouflage. It is important to note that individuals do not evolve, but the populations do over time. A single person cannot evolve, but the population as a whole can. Natural selection can only increase or decrease the heritable traits that vary in the population, and adaptations vary within different environments. We see that as the human population as skin color adaptations in skin color to how close to the equator we are. Typically, the closer to the equator, the darker skin you have because you want less vitamin D absorption. Where we live, and even north of us, we tend to have lighter skin because we need to absorb more vitamin D because we don't get as much sun year round. Evolution is supported by an overwhelming amount of scientific evidence. So this is the stuff that the state likes me to present. I am totally fine if you guys don't believe in this stuff. That's fine. It's just I have to present it to you because the state tells me I have to. New discoveries have continued to fill the gaps that were once identified by Darwin's Origin of Species book. We are able to do this through direct observations of the evolutionary change. Two examples that provide evidence for natural selection are natural selection in response to introduced plant species and the evolution of drug-resistant bacteria. That's why it's recommended you get a flu shot every year because the strain of the flu changes from year to year. So just getting a flu shot one year is not going to protect you every year. Natural selection in response to introduced plant species. So soapberry bugs use their beak to feed on the seeds that are within fruits. In southern Florida, soapberry bugs feed on balloon vines with larger fruit, and they have longer beaks. But in central Florida, they feed on a specific tree that has smaller fruit, so their beaks are shorter. And correlation between the fruit size and the beak size is also closely observed in states like Louisiana and Oklahoma, and as well as in Australia. In all cases, the beak size has evolved in populations that feed on the introduced plants with fruits that are smaller or larger than the native fruits. These cases are examples of evolution by natural selection, that they had to adapt to the food availability in their area. In Florida, this evolution in beak size occurred within less than 35 years. So thinking of how long this bug lives, that's probably a relatively long time. Most bugs don't have a lifespan like humans do. So here is your soapberry bug. Just some graphs talking about the beak length based off of the number of individuals they studied and the food availability. The evolution of drug-resistant bacteria. So the bacterium Streptococcus, I'm sure you guys know what Streptococcus is, strep throat, is commonly found in people. One strain is resistant to certain drugs. This specific strain is called MRSA, which is very dangerous if you do get MRSA, and you typically have to be self-isolated, kind of like we're doing now. But this is even worse because you do have to change your bandages regularly. It's a dangerous pathogen. MRSA became resistant to penicillin in 1945, 2 years after it was first widely used to cure MRSA. It then became resistant to methicillin in 1961, 2 years after it was widely used to cure MRSA. So this MRSA strain is pretty dangerous because it's becoming resistant to almost every drug used to treat it. Methicillin works by inhibiting the protein used by bacteria in their cell walls. The MRSA bacteria use different proteins in their cell walls now. So when exposed to methicillin, MRSA strains are more likely to survive and reproduce than the non-resistant strains are. MRSA strains are now resistant to many antibiotics, in which it makes it really difficult to treat, especially when you have it, and it's very quickly to spread through open wounds and saliva. So typically someone with MRSA cannot expose themselves to any open wounds. They can't share drinks or beverages. It would be actually really hard for them to even pass someone a spoon because they can pass MRSA very easily. This is just a chromosome map of MRSA, of a clone of it called USA 300. You can see it's resistant to the methicillin here. It increases disease in these 3 spots, and it can increase gene exchange as well. Natural selection does not create new traits, but it edits or selects for traits that are already present within the population. The local environment determines which traits can be selected for or against by any specific population. Homology, it's a similarity resulting in common ancestry. So similarities in organisms due to common ancestry. We see evidence of homology in something called a homologous structure. It's an anatomical resemblance that represents the variations on a structural theme present in a common ancestor. Basically what it means is it shows signs of common ancestry. It's the same bone, muscle, joint, structure, whatever it is that we're looking at, that's seen in common ancestors, but is used in a different way. So I like to use the example of the carpals, the metacarpals, and the phalanges. These are the hands, the bones of our hand. We use our hand to pick things up, to grasp things, to hold, to open. Cats also have carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, but they use theirs to walk. And bats also have carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, but they use theirs to fly. So those are all homologous structures. We're all mammals. So we all use our carpals, our metacarpals, and our phalanges differently, but it does show sign of evolutionary relationship between organisms. So I said human and cat, but whales, and I said bat too, whales also have carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, and actually everyone has a humerus, a radius, and an ulna as well. But we use ours to hold, to grasp, to open. Cats use theirs to walk. Whales use theirs to swim, and bats use theirs to fly. But we are all descendants of common ancestors. We can look at this through comparative embryology, which reveals the anatomical homologies that are not visible in adult organisms. So looking at a human and a chick embryo, we have the same, the postanal tail. We call this our tailbone in humans. Chickens obviously grow a tail. And then the same pouches that eventually turn into glands inside of our body. Vestigial structures are a little bit different. These are structures that are remnants of features that were once important to our organism, our species. Humans actually do have quite a few vestigial structures that we have that we no longer need. So think about the appendix. That can be considered a vestigial structure because we can live without it. We don't need it to survive. There is a little bump on people's ear. I actually don't have it, but usually up around here, there's a bump on the ear that is an evolutionary vestigial structure that monkeys have this bump because monkeys' ears point out. Most monkeys, their ears have points on them that come out this way to help sound travel into their ears, but our eardrums have developed to not need that structure. Examples of homologies at the molecular level are genes that are shared among common organisms that are inherited from a common ancestor. So this is why it said that we share, so XYZ amount of genes with monkeys because, human evolution states that we once evolved from monkeys. Evolutionary trees are hypotheses about the relationships among different groups. Homologies form nested patterns in the evolutionary tree. Evolutionary trees can be made using different types of data, for example, anatomical or DNA sequencing data. So this is an evolutionary tree, branch points. Obviously, the furthest over to the left means the older that evolution comes from. So we start here, we have a branch point, and we have our lungfish. It branched again when there were digit-bearing limbs. That gave us amphibians. We had a branch again that gave us mammals. These are our homologous characteristics that it's showing. We branch again and we got lizards and snakes, then we got crocodiles, and we got ostriches and hawks and other birds. And you can see everything but the lungfish is a tetrapod, meaning a four-limbed organism. And then amniotes and then birds. Amniotes meaning the embryonic sac inside of a mom when the baby is being developed. That does exist inside the egg as well. That would be the yolk. So that's an evolutionary tree. You can look at them in a lot of different ways, but it shows relationship between organisms over time. And they can be super detailed, like bringing down hawks and other birds. You could do an evolutionary tree of just mammals. It would be quite large, but you could do it. A different cause of resemblance is convergent evolution. This is the evolution of similar or analogous features in distantly related groups. I always use the shark and the dolphin for this example. Sharks and dolphins have the same fin shape. Their rear fins, their dorsal fin, they're all shaped the same, but they are different anatomically. Dolphins are mammals, and they swim up and down with their back fin. Sharks, although the fin is shaped the same, swim side to side because they're fish. That's just the way the spine works. Analogous traits arise when groups of organisms independently adapt to their environments, the same environment, in similar ways. So sharks and dolphins had to evolve to the environment of the ocean in similar ways, but they will never become the same species because evolutionary, they are two different species. Convergent evolution does not provide information about ancestry, but it does show adaptation for that specific environment. So another way of looking at it is the sugar glider, which is native to Australia, and the North American flying squirrel. They are similar species. They have adapted to similar environments, although they are not related at all. The fossil record provides evidence of the extinction of species, the origin of new groups, and changes within those groups over time. So we're looking at a toe. We have a dog. So most mammals, even toad, I guess. I don't know. We're looking at bones, basically fossils of a canine. And then I don't ever remember what this one is, but then we have pig and a deer. So you can look at the fossil record to see the similar shape. Obviously, it changes over time. Fossils can document important transitions. For example, the transition from land to sea mammals and land to sea animals as well in the ancestor of creations. So it is originally thought that all mammals once were sea mammals, but they had to come from somewhere. So it is originally thought that whales once walked on land. There is evidence that whales once had a pelvis bone, which is the bone that your legs connect to, although they don't have legs. So that led scientists to believe that one period in time, whales did actually walk on land. So this is just kind of explaining that a little bit more. So we have a deer and a hippo, obviously, and then it starts showing the bone. So the pelvis here, slowly, Dorudon is one of the first, well, this here is one of the first walking whales. Dorudon was one of the first whales that started losing the leg. So you can see how small it got. And then whales still have a pelvis today. Biogeography is the geographic distribution of species around the world and can provide evidence of evolution. Earth's continents were formerly united in a large supercontinent. We all know this, Pangaea, but have since separated by continental drift. An understanding of continental movement and modern distribution of species allows us to predict where and when different groups were able to evolve. An endemic species are species that are not found anywhere else in the world, so they are native to just that one land. Islands that have these types of species are often closely related to species on the nearest mainland or island. Darwin explained that species on the island gave rise to new species as they adapted to their new environments. So, what is so theoretical about Darwin's view of life? In science, a theory accounts for many observations and data and attempts to explain and integrate a great variety of phenomena. Pretty much the whole concept of science is phenomena. So how are we explaining the things that are happening? Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection integrates a diverse area of biology study and stimulates many new research questions. Ongoing research adds to our understanding of evolution, and obviously this is just the theory of evolution. We are constantly adding and changing to that theory. So observations that we can take, individuals in a population vary in their heritable characteristics. That's why none of us look the same. We don't look identical to our parents unless we are identical twins. That's the only time we will look the same. Organisms produce more offspring than the environment supports. That's pretty obvious. The human population is growing exponentially, and the environment cannot support an exponential amount of humans, which allows us to inference that individuals are well suited for their environment, tend to leave more offspring than other individuals can, and over time, favorable traits can accumulate in the population. This is just talking about mosquito resistance to DDT, which is a pesticide to help keep mosquitoes away. And that's it. That's it for chapter 22. So make sure you read your book, watch my video. If you got this point, you already did. And take your notes, answer your discussion board question. And on Tuesday, we start chapter 23.